When I was younger, I did a lot of rock climbing, and I had some beautiful days out in the Blue Mountains, climbing all day on majestic sandstone cliffs overlooking the Jamison Valley or looking across the Three Sisters. Rock climbing is exciting because it's terrifying. Even though you've got a harness and a rope, you're clinging on to very small pieces of rock with your fingertips, maybe the size of a 20-cent piece, and try and balance your toes on equally small pieces of rock. And so it's a thrill to kind of try and hold on and find your way up the cliff line. But every now and then, you get to a nice, safe, sturdy, secure ledge, something big enough that you could put your whole foot on, or a handhold you really kind of grab your whole hand on and rest for a while. And whenever you got to those rest points, it was just a sigh of relief. You felt safe and secure. I could shake my hands out and get some blood into my fingers, catch my breath, get some more chalk on my hands, and then set off again to the next bit of the climb. I think that idea of getting to that safe, secure place in our climb is also a good analogy for our faith life, for our growth in faith as well, because we all long to get to a place which is secure and safe. In our faith, I guess the world, it takes time for us to pull together an understanding of how the world works, who we are, and how God works. And over time, we can develop, I guess, a worldview and a faith which is safe and secure, where we're not surprised by things all the time. We can go, oh, well, that thing happened, I understand that, or I know this is what to expect or what not to expect. It's a nice, safe, secure place to be. But sometimes things happen which challenge that safe, secure faith and worldview and make us wonder and make us question, perhaps make us doubt. And we see that in the gospel today, where Thomas is the one who misses out on seeing the risen Jesus. And we know the story well, of course, that this is the day of Jesus' resurrection. He appears to the disciples, but Thomas, for some reason, is not there and he misses out. And instead of coming back and the disciples say, we saw Jesus alive, Thomas doesn't say, oh, well, of course, whatever you say, I'll believe anything. Thomas doesn't say that. Thomas quite reasonably says, no, I don't believe that. I saw Jesus die on the cross. I saw Jesus' body placed in a tomb. And I don't believe when you say you've seen him again, unless I can see him for myself, unless I can see him and put my fingers in the holes in his the holes that the nails made in his hands so I know it's really him. I'm not going to believe this. And so we call Thomas Doubting Thomas, but that's a bit unfair really, because I think Thomas should be called Thomas who asks reasonable questions. It's a very reasonable thing to ask questions and to wonder. But what we find in Thomas is because Thomas dares to doubt, when he does then get the answer he needs, when he sees Jesus the next time he comes and is able to touch his wounds, Thomas then kneels down and says, my Lord and my God. Nobody else in all the Gospels calls Jesus God. It is the highest affirmation of faith we hear anywhere in the Gospels. People call Jesus Lord and Master and Son of God, but only Thomas calls him God. And I think it's because he dared to doubt. And there's something about daring to doubt, daring to ask questions, daring to wonder that lets us actually grow our faith. If we stay on that secure ledge all the time, if we say, nope, I'm not going to think that, that's too hard, I'm just going to block that out, then we may never actually grow. Because our journey of faith is like a rock climb, where we have moments of a safe, secure ledge, and then other times we have to kind of work our way up to a place which feels insecure, where we feel like we're clinging on with our fingertips. I think sometimes people feel like they're clinging to their faith with the skin of their fingers sometimes. When things are hard, when things happen which challenge our belief in a good and loving God, or a God who has plans for us in our lives, when things go wrong, when we suffer, or we discover things which are just outside our worldview, then we might start to wonder, well, can I still believe the way I believed before? This is a real challenge for many of us. But I want to suggest, though, that daring to doubt is a good thing, because things will happen in our lives. It will stretch and expand our worldview. They will challenge our faith, and if we let them, our faith will grow stronger and deeper. We'll discover more and more of who God really is, rather than who we wanted God to be, perhaps earlier on. It is that risk of moving up the cliff, going to places which are dangerous, which are risky, which are insecure. That's a really hard place to be. And we don't want to be there usually. And so some people will simply block things out and say, no, not going there. I'm going to stay on my nice, secure ledge. And so that's why people who've suffered great trauma in their lives will sometimes just repress the memory because it would be far too challenging to remember it and try and integrate it into our self-understanding and ultimately our faith. The other people you hear, people often describe another person's opinions as being woke. That's an opinion used these days. Oh, that's all woke. But to say someone else is woke is actually a really demeaning thing, which really says more about themselves. It says, I'm on a safe, secure ledge, and I'm not going to be bothered by anybody else's troubles here, anybody else's challenges in life. I'm going to stay in my nice little cocoon where it's nice and safe. But the problem is, if we stay on that ledge, we never finish the climb. We're actually dangling mid-air, paralyzed between when we're not on the ground, we're not at the top of the climb, we're just hanging somewhere in between. And that's not an adult faith. That's not a mature faith. So I want us to learn from Thomas, who dared to doubt, who dared to wonder, who dared to ask questions, even when it was uncomfortable, because it must have been so uncomfortable for Thomas when everybody around him believed something and he didn't anymore. But what we can also learn from Thomas is he hung in there. He didn't go, well, you guys are all crazy. I'm out of here. I'm not coming back again. If Thomas had done that, he wouldn't have been there where he needed to be when Jesus showed himself again the following week. We hear it's 8 days later, the following week, that Jesus comes back. Thomas wouldn't have been there, but because he was able to get the answers he needed. And that's, I think, the challenge for us too. In our times of doubt, in our times of wrestling and questioning and wondering, hang in there in the church. Stay with the church. Stay with the church community, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when everyone else around you gets up and recites the creed like they seem to believe it off by heart, but you're not sure anymore. When people pray for things, but you're not sure whether praying for that really works for you anymore, whether your prayers don't feel like they're being answered anymore, hang in there. Stay with your church. Stay with your community. Stay with your prayer group, your youth group, whatever it is, because it's there that you are most likely to discover Jesus in the way that he needs to show himself to you. Trust that Jesus will come and show his risen self to you at the time and the way that he desires. It may not be the way that we want. Let God be God and do what God most needs to do for us. Trust. We're allowed to doubt. We're allowed to ask questions. But if we do it in the anticipation that if we stay in church, we will get the answer we need. We will grow in faith. And like Thomas, have come to have the highest affirmation of faith possible. We will grow to a deeper, more mature faith, make it to the top of that climb.